Hi and welcome back. In this video, we'll be looking at words having to do with politics and government. One of the basic words for power we've already seen when we were talking about work, and that is dunamai. A related noun is he dunamis, power, strength, or ability. This is really a generic term for power or ability of any kind, and it's a third declension noun of the polis type. So the genitive singular is dunamios, and the accusative singular is dunamin, and the nominative plural is dunames. Another word for authority or power is he exousia. This is more specifically focused on the right to exercise control over others. Some words for ruling include archo, which means I am first or I rule. The idea here is of ruling as precedence or ruling as being first in rank. This is a verb where the he at the end of the stem combines as usual with the sigma tense markers. And so in the first aorist active we have erxa, and in the future active we have arxo. The derived noun is ha'archon, ruler. This is a third declension noun of the ampelon type, and so the genitive singular is archontos. The dative plural here is awkward because it would be archont, the real stem, plus c, but that is difficult to pronounce, archontsi, and so the dative plural becomes archusi. But anyone who exercises power is considered first in rank, whether it's a human archon or whether it's the spiritual archontes that the Apostle Paul talks about in particular, being involved in the affairs of this world. Ha hekatontarches, you can see the arch stem buried in there, but this is the word for a centurion. It's a masculine first declension noun, and so the genitive will be hekatontarchu, even though the rest of the endings will be first declension endings. Hekatontarche, hekatontarche, etc. This is 100 liter, hekaton, plus arches in the Roman military system. It's the highest military rank, too, that would usually be encountered by ordinary people. And you can see at right there a modern reconstruction of the uniform and battle gear of a centurion. Here are some more words that are related to ruling, or at least related to other ruling words. The word archo in the middle becomes archamai, meaning I begin. And sometimes this is treated as a separate verb because really the middle form of archo has quite a different meaning. It doesn't anymore convey being first or being in first rank. Now it just means to begin something. So you can treat it as a separate middle-only verb for all intents and purposes. But the same stem changes happen here that happen with archo. In the aorist, we have erxamen, and in the future we have arxamai. He arche is another verb derived, this time from archamai, probably not archo. And it means something quite different than ha-archon. He arche is the beginning, not a ruler. And we see a similar fluidity of meaning in hegeomai. This can mean I lead, but it also can refer to some of the activity that's involved in leading. It can mean I think or I consider. This is a contract verb, so we'll have forms like hegetai, where the epsilon at the end of the stem contracts with the epsilon of the etai ending, and they become an epsilon iota diphthong. hegetai. That's the present third-person singular form of hegeamai. Or hegumatha, where the in the present first-person plural form, the epsilon contract vowel combines with the omicron of the omatha ending to give that omicron upsilon u diphthong. Notice with hegeamai that there's no visible augment in the aorist forms. Why is this? Because the long eta at the beginning can't be lengthened any further. So, like with any other initial vowels, the augment, the epsilon of the augment, is absorbed by the initial vowel, but that initial vowel is already long, so it doesn't lengthen any further. So we just get hegesamein. The focus in hegeamai is not just on exercising power, it's on leadership in the sense of making choices, making discernments that are necessary in order to exercise power. And I think this is why we get the combination with this one verb of the idea of leading and the idea of thinking or considering. One of the basic forms of ancient government was the kingdom, and ha basileus is the king. This is another third declension noun of the hiereus type. And what distinguished ha basileus from ha tyrannos? That's just the absolute leader who ruled by sheer force. Ha basileus really is only distinguished in the ancient world by virtue of his having inherited his authority and his power through a legitimate line of kings. But there was always a lot of ambivalence in the ancient Roman world and Greek world about the figure of ha basileus, because the ideal was to have free city-states, not kingdoms. He basileia, though, means kingdom or reign. And the key to understanding the sense of basileia here is to remember that political power in the ancient world was about personal loyalty to a figure, to a particular ruler. The king's personal sphere of control, then, his reign, is what is generally meant by he basileia. Hence, the basileia theou, the kingdom of God, is not a geographic region, it's not a place, so much as it is the sphere in which God is in control. Ha thronos means throne, or more usually chair, and it was a sign of power for a ruler to be seated while others stood, or even knelt. So the chair of the king or tyrant was a symbol of his power. But we have to remember that thronos is also a word just for an ordinary chair. So we don't have a specialized term really for throne here, but thronos gets its significance in royal contexts from its being the king's chair, not from its being just a thronos. Perhaps the more fundamental political unit in the ancient world was the city, or the city-state. And each city-state was usually ruled by a council of landowning men. And the system could be thought of as a hegemony, that is, rule of the few. Not really democracy in most ancient city-states, but also not monarchy, because there's a council, a class of people in this the city or town who were seen as more or less equals and who would meet together to talk and make decisions. Hebule, then, means both the act of giving advice or counsel, and it also means this body of people, the council, the city council. The verb bouleo, not surprisingly, refers to what that city council would do. It means to discuss or deliberate. And notice that it's an epsilon contract verb. The middle form, boulamai, means I desire or plan or intend. And with the middle form, it focuses more on intention rather than the activity of discussion. This is not a contract verb, and so there's some ambiguity about whether this is really a separate middle-only verb or whether this is the middle form of bouleo, and it just loses the contract vowel. But whichever way we take it, this isn't a contract verb, boulamai. And when you're talking about desiring or planning or intending, you use the middle only. He ekklesia means assembly, and this is the word that comes to mean church in early Christian writings. We have to understand, though, that this wasn't a theological term, at least not before Christians picked it up and began to use it that way. This was a general term for any large public gathering in the Greco-Roman world. It was used for assemblies, for example, when the whole city populace would come out to hear some announcement or make some corporate decision. And so in the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Greek Bible, this was used for the assembly of all Israel who would come out and receive, for example, the covenant with Yahweh. So it's this overtone that probably we should hear when New Testament writers use he ekklesia for their local gatherings. They're thinking of themselves as, in some sense, the new Israel, and their gatherings, even their local gatherings, are like the gatherings of all Israel before God in the Old Testament. Before we move on from this vocabulary about ruling and government, it's important for us to notice that some verbs have quite a different meaning in the middle voice than they do in the active voice, and archo is one of these. It's almost like archo in the active voice is a different verb from archomai, which acts like its own deponent verb with a different sense. Archo means, as we saw above, I rule. Archomai, though, means I begin or start in the middle voice, and it only has that meaning in the middle voice. So if you treat archomai almost like a separate deponent or middle-only verb, that will help you to distinguish it from the use of archo in the active to mean I rule. The same stem changes, of course, that happen in the active with archo also happen in the middle forms with archomai. So the first aorist middle is erxamein, with the xi because of the sigma eliding with the he of the stem, and the future middle is arxomai.